honourable member for Halifax.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd ask that you give me a heads up when I'm about to run out of time. I would greatly appreciate that. I, along with my NDP colleagues, oppose this monster budget bill. I oppose it on both content and process. First, I'll talk about the process. The Conservatives talk about the unprecedented level of debate and hours of debate about this bill and the previous budget bill. Even the member from Crowfoot, who was right before me, talked about unprecedented debate in this House. So let's actually review and see if they're right. C-20, which was what the budget bill was called in 1991, was 6 pages long. 6 pages long, and yet between first and third reading in the House of Commons, we saw 192 days of debate. 1995 was called C-76, 48 pages long. Ooh, it's getting big. 78 days of debate in this chamber. C-32 in 2000, 29 pages long. Went down a little bit in size. 60 days of debate. C-33 in 2004, the budget bill was 76 pages long, and it received in this chamber 79 days of debate. What happened this year? This spring, we saw an omnibus budget bill that saw over 70 laws touched or outright repealed. A third of that budget was about gutting environmental legislation. Most pieces of the budget had not been debated in this House before, and most of those pieces weren't campaigned on. I don't remember the Conservatives campaigning in the 2011 election saying, I'm going to reduce OAS eligibility from the age of 65 to 67. I don't remember them doing that. I don't remember them campaigning on the fact that they were going to diminish health care transfers. In fact, during that election, I was the health critic for the NDP, and I remember the opposite. The Conservatives campaigning on maintaining and increasing health care transfers. And you know what? You also can't find any of these pieces in Conservative Party policy. If you turn to their party policy, you're not going to find we believe that we should raise the age that people can collect their OAS. You won't find it, Mr. Speaker. And we had the member from Crowfoot right before me talking about, we've had this budget, this stuff has existed for so long, you should have read it. I would love if any member on that side of the House could tell me anything, even one stitch of a word, about what the changes were to the Assisted Human Reproduction Act in the last omnibus budget bill. Never mind what that had to do with the budget. I think most of them would be hard-pressed to even repeat the phrase assisted human reproduction. So now we had a bill in the spring that was C-38. It was 425 pages long, and we had 54 days of debate. And here we are again this fall with the second omnibus budget, the son of omnibus. I don't know how long this debate's going to go, but they've already moved time allocation. I can't imagine it's going to be very long. I can't imagine it's going to be the, heady days of 1991 where there was 192 days of debate. I highly doubt that. And we have a bill that's over 440 pages long. And the length of debate is important. Maybe the Conservatives don't think it's important because they don't want to listen. They don't like to listen when the NDP brings forward reasonable ideas. They just want to sit there with their eyes closed and their hands over their ears. But it's important for democracy. The length of debate is important for democracy because the length of debate allows entry points for civil society to engage with the legislative process. Think about it. How does civil society actually engage with this process? They can't come here and vote. They can't come here and give speeches in this House, but there are entry points for them. They write letters to their MPs. They write letters to the editor. They come and they testify at committee. They come up with good ideas. They send it to us via social media. They phone us. They have meetings with us in our community. They have brown bag luncheon seminars in their workplace to talk about how is this going to impact us. Sometimes, you know what, they even take to the streets. But the length of debate allows that process, that moment for civil society to engage with the legislative process. The NDP brought forward amendments to this bill. We brought forward amendments at committee based on what community was telling us, based on what civil society was telling us. The opposition brought forward over 800 amendments here in this House based on what civil society was saying. But we had 54 days of debate where that entry point for civil society was eliminated because not one amendment was made. And what's the result? Because they didn't listen, in this omnibus monster budget bill, we have amendments to amendments. Amendments to amendments that were made in the last budget bill. Can you imagine amendments to amendments in the same year? As if we needed more evidence that the Conservatives are bad managers? This process is undemocratic. C-45 is a massive omnibus budget bill that makes amendments to a wide range of acts. And once again, the Conservatives are trying to ram through this legislation, ram it through Parliament, without allowing Canadians and their MPs to thoroughly examine it. And that's something they need to remember. We are their members of Parliament. It is our job to look at this bill properly, to make amendments, to suggest ideas. That's what our job is. And the NDP is proud to stand in this House and actually do our job. I fear I'm running out of time quickly. And I wanted to actually, thank you, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to actually share some words from Canadians. I know the Conservatives aren't going to listen to the NDP because they don't like reasonable, good, sound ideas, but maybe they'll listen to Canadians. So I have some letters that I received from constituents. Rebecca Hutton. My name's Rebecca Hutton. I'm a university student deeply concerned about the budget. I'm writing to let you know how disturbed I am by this furtive endeavour to use an omnibus budget bill to completely wipe out years of progress that Canada has made on environmental protection. For the sake of government, I implore you to demand the non-budget matters, all environmental changes, be removed from C-38, this is the last budget bill, and put forward as standalone legislation. Well, we took that advice, Rebecca, and we tried to do that, but the Conservatives refused to listen. We're trying to do that with this budget bill as well. We'll see if they come around to their senses. I received another letter from Bill Davidson, who wrote, I'm one of your constituents in Halifax, and I wanted to write to you to express my displeasure, or rather horror, about Bill C-38, the Conservatives' omnibus budget bill. This is not a budget. It's one of the most anti-democratic pieces of legislation ever tabled in a Canadian Parliament, complete with wholesale destruction of anything resembling environmental policy. It's anti-environment, anti-science, anti-common sense, and it's insulting to Canadians from coast to coast to coast. Please, Member of Parliament for Halifax, don't let these guys get away with this without putting up a fight. Lee and Diane Collins wrote me, our fathers and grandfathers fought for democracy, many giving the ultimate sacrifice of their lives against tyranny and government control, censorship against free speech, and the right to protest against that which we deem to be detrimental to our society is what they fought against. This current government disrespects their memory. Our children and grandchildren will not have much of a world to grow up in when we allow the short-sighted goals of profit to overwhelm Canada's proud legacy of its environment and wildlife. We most emphatically urge you to speak out against this bill and these measures to still the voice of opposition to environmental destruction. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I would like to seek unanimous consent to move the following motion. That notwithstanding any standing order or usual practice of the House, clauses 316 to 350 and Schedule 2 related to changes to the Navigable Waters Protection Act and clauses 425 to 432 related to the changes to the Canadian Environmental Assessment Act 2012 be removed from Bill C-45, a second act to implement certain provisions of the budget tabled in Parliament on March 29, 2012, and other measures and do compose Bill C-47. That Bill C-47 be entitled An Act to Amend the Navigable Waters Protection Act and the Canadian Environmental Assessment Act 2012, that Bill C-47 be deemed read a first time and be printed, that the order for second reading of the said bill, provide for the referral to the Standing Committee on Environment and Sustainable Development, that Bill C-45 retain the status on the order paper that it had prior to the adoption of this order, that Bill C-45 be reprinted as amended, and that the Law Clerk and Parliamentary Council be authorized to make any technical changes or corrections as may be necessary to give effect to this motion. Mr. Speaker, we're proposing this motion in order to ensure that the bill is split for proper study at the correct committee, specifically the Navigable Waters Protection Act, to ensure that it's reviewed at the Environment Committee where it belongs and which government websites would have supported until about 7 days ago. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Does the honourable member